I think a lot of us have been watching with horror at what's been going on the southern border of the United States for some time now. And of course, some of that has reached a crescendo over the past week or so with those tragic pictures of the father and daughter who died trying to enter into this country. And in that context, I was very moved by a piece I read, maybe a week or 10 days ago now. And my next guest is the author of that piece. Jenn Budd was formerly a senior Border Patrol agent for the United States government. She left that job. The heading of the piece, which was published in southernborder.org, was entitled, I used to detain migrants at the border. Now I help them. So first of all, Jenn Budd, thanks for coming on the program.
Oh, thanks for the invite. I appreciate it.
Well, thanks for writing this piece. It was really, I found it quite moving. And I also found your story quite moving because you were so honest in it. And basically, you were a senior Border Patrol agent for how long? How many years?
I originally joined the Border Patrol in 1995, and that was during the Clinton administration. And then I left pretty much almost 6 years to the day in 2001.
So when you joined, was that what drew you to that job in particular? Was there anything about it, law enforcement or any other aspect of the job that made you think you might want to do that?
I graduated in the end or winter quarter, I would say, of 1993 from Auburn University, and I decided I didn't want to go to law school, and somebody had told me that the Border Patrol was hiring, and that's a federal position. And I'd never heard of it because I'm from Alabama, and during that time, in the mid 90s, immigration wasn't as big as a topic as it is now. So I thought, yeah, I'll join the Border Patrol. They said it would be about, keeping people from bringing drugs into the country and terrorism and stuff. And so I thought it would be a foot in the door and a chance to move out to California.
So you were for, let's say, 6 years, you said, and it sounds like well, at what point, let me put it this way, you write in your piece that you were increasingly aware that you were not always doing the right thing by the people you were dealing with, the migrants you were dealing with. How quickly did you come to that realization? Was there any special incident, or how did that come about?
I think in regards to the migrants themselves, I recall one incident in particular when I had apprehended a group and waiting for transport out in the area that I worked in the mountains took quite a while. And I had an opportunity to speak to a man that I had apprehended who spoke English much better than my Spanish was, and that helped a lot. And he actually had a law degree as well, and he had asked me if the Border Patrol or the United States in general treated, Canadians the same way as we were treating Mexicans who entered in areas that weren't designated as a port of entry. And I had to say, when I thought about it, no, we don't treat them that way. And I started to think about why that was and what the difference was.
And of course, the difference, my answer to that would be racism.
Yeah, mine too.
Yeah, so it's tough though when you get a job and it's a government job. The benefits I assume are good, pays decent, pretty good. You're working with people. They're your colleagues every day. It's tough to kind of cross that border. So forgive the analogy, but of saying, I really can't do this anymore. A lot of people, you describe in your article how you kind of like don't really, for a while, you didn't really confront the morality or immorality of what you were doing. But then there comes a point when you can't turn away from it anymore. Was there a point like that for you where you just suddenly woke up one morning or at some point during the day just said, I can't do this job anymore?
Um, it was off and on, and then there would be situations where I was maybe on a detail, and so I could isolate what I was exposing myself to more and felt like I was doing good, like maybe details with drug task force and stuff. Um, but then after, about 5 or 6 years, I was in sector intelligence and started realizing that the drugs that were coming through my station area, Campo in the mountains, the city is called Campo and it's called Campo Station, was actually being organized by the boss of the station at the time. And I started trying to look into that and ended up basically being told I was not going to go any further and I was not allowed to talk to the FBI and the DEA or I'd be written up, and that was an order, and was offered a promotion at sector if I would keep quiet, and I decided to turn my badge and my gun in after I refused to keep quiet, and they put me on the border and I started getting shot at in the middle of the night. And so I just felt like at the time that I was doing all I could do and I needed to get out of there for my own safety. So,
Well, other law enforcement personnel that have been put in that position in police forces and elsewhere have not always survived.
right, it's true.
So obviously you must have been, among other things, concerned for your life. And so you left, and now what are you doing now? You mentioned that you help migrants at the border. What are you doing to help them?
Now, I'm trying to educate myself and amplify the voices of the people who've been working in this area for a long time, and trying to understand what our policies on the border, even those that I enforced and the new policies that we're seeing today, how that affects people in their real everyday lives, not just migrants, but the people who live on the border that live under militarized, their communities are militarized now. It's like a war zone down there, and they've not been able to have any say-so in how their communities should look or be policed. And so I talk about it with a lot of different groups, and I try to experience what it is to know. I can't experience personally what it is, obviously, to be a migrant, but to go and meet migrants who are going through this and to try and help them when the CBP releases them into the United States for their asylum hearings and so forth, and talk to them and listen to their stories. Whereas before I didn't want to talk to them and listen to their stories because, frankly, it was difficult to do that. It was a selfish reason, but now I'm just trying to educate myself as much as I can and call attention to their stories and what is really going on down here. And also the deported veterans. I don't think a lot of Americans know this, but the United States deports its veterans too. And that's a travesty. That's a disgrace in my mind.
So you're talking about those people who have served in the armed forces of the United States, and then they may not have full documentation or whatever, so they're actually deported after having served a tour of duty, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. There was something else, Jenn Bud, that caught my eye in your piece, because a lot of people who are concerned, and I believe rightfully concerned, about the terrible things happening at the border, they tend to think it's just a Donald Trump problem. But there's a paragraph here, and you serve. I guess you were saying you left around 2001. You were saying being a border. You write, being a border patrol agent was less about making our borders safe, enforcing laws or honor, as they tried to make us believe, and more about making President Clinton's Operation Gatekeeper a success. We had to justify the building of his wall, the increase of funding of agents of the Border Patrol's militarization, all the while denying that our actions were actually contributing to the problem. So that tells me, for one thing, that a Democratic as well as Republican presidents, at least one, has, contributed to the militarization of the border, and that for a long time now, at least in your view, in your experience, our border efforts have not necessarily been about, making the country better or the world better. It's been a lot about justifying themselves and maybe the whole militarization that goes along with that. But I don't want to speak for you. That was what I took away from it. And what are your thoughts?
No, that's exactly what I was trying to get at. Is a lot of people who maybe are on the other side of this and think that the policies that are being enacted and followed today, whether they're written or just verbal, are okay. And then they say, well, I bet you didn't have a problem with Obama or you didn't have a problem with Clinton. And that's not true. I did. And it was interesting as I was writing that piece, and I wrote that part about that we had to build the wall and we had to militarize up and get more resources and sensors and all this other stuff. And after I wrote that sentence, I was like, that's exactly what we're still doing today. So, 20 plus years later, we're doing the exact same thing again, and we do it with every president. And it's not contributed anything to the problem. If anything, it just exasperates it more. And we just keep throwing more and more money at it when it's not a law enforcement problem, especially nowadays when you look at how the migration patterns have changed. The demographics of the people who are coming here are different in that they are asylum seekers. When I was an agent, we had more people coming here from Mexico who were looking for jobs, not necessarily trying to claim asylum. And so the demographics had changed, but the strategies and the policies have not. And they've never bothered to listen to the leaders down here who have been working on these issues, like Raices in Texas or the Southern Border Community Coalition, Alliance San Diego. There's tons of people down here that have been working on this for a long time. This is nothing new. And I think that we need to stop seeing this as a law enforcement issue when it's a humanitarian issue, and that we need to listen to these people and stop allowing the anti-immigrant hate groups of the right and this constant militarization to dictate how we handle things on the border and what our policies and laws should be. I mean, we're better than this. We can do much more than what we're doing now, and we can do it better, and we can do it without children dying or people being forced to go out to the dangerous terrains and cross and risk their lives.
So if you, Jenn Budd, were the appointed the czar of fixing this problem, let's say Border Patrol czar or, whatever, what would you tell us to do?
I would tell us the first thing is that we have to listen to these organizations and the immigration attorneys, the people that make up this community down here. It's not fair to police a community and not let them have a voice in it. I think we need to listen to people who are experts in asylum and refugee crises, and we need to develop a system that addresses that and decriminalizes that. I agreed. I was watching the debates last night and saw that Julian Castro has a really good start to this, and he's confirmed with a lot of organizers and people that live in this area and that have worked on this. And he's arguing for the decriminalization of what he called 1325, which is 8 USC 1325, which is the charge of entering without inspection. And that, we obviously need patrol for drugs and terrorism, but being an immigrant is not a crime, and needing to file asylum is not a crime, as being a refugee is not a crime, and we need to stop treating it as that. So there's a lot of work to be done, but there are a lot of people who have done the studies and know how to implement these structures and organizations, and it can be done. If we can put a man on the moon, we can demilitarize the border and make it a community that benefits both sides while maintaining our security at the same time.
Well, I think that's extremely well said. And Jenn Budd, former senior Border Patrol agent and author of the piece headlined, "I used to detain migrants at the border, now I help them," which is at southernborder.org. Thanks for your astute observations, and thanks for coming on the program.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.